So this is our very first get to see us video. We're doing it today. And it's not being posted today, but today is July 1st, 2019. And what's interesting is that today was a solar eclipse earlier, just a few hours ago. And the solar eclipse is falling in both my 10th house and your 10th house. Now, solar eclipses always occur on a new moon, because the new moon always happens when the sun and the moon are together, but they're usually not overlapping perfectly. So when the moon overlaps the sun perfectly, you get a solar eclipse. And this particular solar eclipse was visible in parts of South America. Most of it was in the Pacific Ocean. And it's more powerful if it happens where you are living, or if you go to it and you hang out with it while it's happening. I knew someone years ago that when it happened on her birthday, her entire life changed. Because the birthday begins the year. You can do a solar return on the birthday. That it will, depending on where you are when it happens, it represents the soul's choices for the year to come. But this person's whole life just completely transformed. They jumped into their real life purpose and they just took off. They were a completely different person after having the birthday on their solar eclipse. So new moons always represent new beginnings. So you can always sort of track when the new moons are happening in your chart. They're always going to be pretty much at more or less the same time every year. They're going to be in the same part of your chart. Yeah. But when it's an eclipse, it's like a turbocharged new beginning. So here we have this turbocharged new beginning. It's in both of our 10th houses, which have to do with career, our role in society, positioning yourself before society. So I thought, oh, I didn't even really plan it that way. I didn't think about it, but that's what's happening today. So that's a kind of little mini tutorial about solar eclipses, and just just the fact that they happen to line up with what we're doing today.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Does it make you extra emotionally charged too? Because I feel like, I don't know, the past weekend I felt pretty kind of a little bit off. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's lots of feelings of past relationships and things that have been popping in my head too. I don't know if it's just age too, but does it bring up other things other than
and it also depends on what other planets it's aspecting in your chart. And because I just realized that it's been both our 10th houses, I didn't really look at what exactly it's aspecting in your chart. But the other thing is that this is a solar eclipse before the lunar eclipse, and solar eclipses and lunar eclipses come together. And we always have either a solar eclipse before the lunar eclipse, or a lunar eclipse before the solar eclipse, or we have actually 2 solar eclipses with a lunar eclipse in the middle, or 2 lunar eclipses with a solar eclipse in the middle. That's how they work. Those are one of the 4 ways they work. Lunar eclipses do bring up old past issues. They do bring up old past emotions. So this solar eclipse is that lovely little new beginning, but it's being followed right away by a lunar eclipse. The lunar eclipse cycle starts right at the new moon. Whether it's a solar eclipse or not, the lunar eclipse cycle begins at that new moon. So during that entire lunar cycle, so from the new moon up to the lunar eclipse and until the following new moon, this dredging up of old stuff happens. Now the people,
or is it to clear it, or is it
that's exactly what it is. Exactly what it is.
Now,
the people who work with stone circles in Europe, they talk about the lunar eclipses as being the Menses of the goddess, which is a great description for it. Because everybody gets PMS. And the lunar eclipse cycle tends to get stronger and stronger until the eclipse happens, and then it's strongest after the eclipse happens, and then it settles slowly down until the following new moon. And they all have a little bit of a different rhythm. So some of them things will wave up at different points. They're kind of all unique. But one of the things that's important with a lunar eclipse is don't believe everything you feel. There's my favorite bumper sticker was don't believe everything you think. But don't believe everything you feel is the motto from lunar eclipse.
That's good. When you're thinking of 2 exes, you're kind of what?
Exactly.
Doesn't mean you're still in love with them. Doesn't
Yeah. It comes up out of nowhere.
That's interesting.
Or things happen that trigger you, and because everyone's more, to a greater or lesser extent, being influenced by the lunar eclipse, people, of course, are triggering each other left, right, and center.
Yeah, I could see that.
As it progresses. So it's just to be aware that that's what's going on. And it's easy to get caught up in it and then stop and go, oh, right, it's just a lunar eclipse. Just observe it going by and do your best to let go of old crap.
Yeah, I had no idea. That's
And
interesting.
another thing I've noticed about lunar eclipses is they tend to have more of an impact if the endocrine system is not particularly balanced.
Mm.
So it makes sense because the moon has such an effect on all the fluids in the body.
Yeah.
The endocrine system is sending hormonal information into the bloodstream. So the endocrine system itself is a water system, and the
Mm-hmm.
moon, as it controls the tides, it affects all the water in the
Mm-hmm.
world, including the water in 90% of our bodies.
Yeah.
And it's if our endocrine system is healthy, then we don't get knocked by it. Because the other thing that happens with lunar eclipses is that there's a more precise gravitational effect.
Yeah.
Because what's happening when there's a lunar eclipse is that the Earth is directly in between the sun and the moon,
Mm-hmm.
which also means that the sun and the moon are precisely opposite to each other and pulling very directly on the Earth. So the tides are always higher and
Mm-hmm.
lower during lunar eclipse cycles. They become more extreme. And the water tides inside us, there's even earth tides in the physical concrete crust of the earth also moves a certain amount according to the moon, which a lot of people don't know about that. Plus, with a lunar eclipse, there's also a strong etheric effect that the moon has.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the etheric is the body in between our physical body and our astral body, and it has to do with life force energy. It's one of the easiest things to see if you want to see an aura. If you go into a dark room, and when it's just a little bit of a dim light and you look at your hand, and sometimes you'll be able to see a very gray coating all around your hand, all around your fingers, and that's the etheric body.
Yeah.
And how thick it is how strong your vitality is.
Mm.
But what happens whenever there is a full moon is that all of nature gets a big etheric boost.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a lunar eclipse, that etheric boost is interfered with by the shadow of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So nature doesn't get the same boost that it's normally getting as well. So that's another thing that feels disturbing. There's sometimes a creepy quality about lunar eclipses. It feels disturbing because we didn't get our boost, and people are more tired during a lunar eclipse cycle as a result, because the etheric is this semi-physical energy. It's a very interesting bridge in between the physical plane and the more spiritual levels.
Interesting. You might just feel more tired too.
Exactly. So you feel more tired, you're feeling PMSy no matter what your gender is. But it's very valuable because it's really, really necessary on a regular basis to clean house emotionally, clean house subconsciously.
So is it better to rest in that time?
Yeah, if you can get as much rest as possible, for sure.
That's really cool though.